First we have Dan Heng, then we have Dill, and now we have Dan Heng PT. Can't wait for a Harmony Path Dan Heng, and we'd have a full team of only Dan Hengs. Hello internet, and welcome to a Dan Heng PT guide where I'll be bringing you through walls of text in a hopefully simpler way. Me and Dan Heng go way back on the channel, so yep, I'm excited for this one. Naturally, we got his teams, builds, light cones, and everything I can think of. Feel free to use the timestamps below to navigate your way through. Just a quick note, parts of the recordings you see in this video are from the Creator Experience server. With that out the way, let's just start with a conclusion. Dan Heng PT is a consistent shield sustain with the ability to provide an ally with a summon. His kit revolves around mainly using his skill and ultimate in order to obtain shield for your entire team. What makes him unique is the ability to just survive off of using his ultimate or using the soul dragon provided for an ally to obtain shields, and he can technically just spend the entire time spamming basic, generating really valuable skill points for your team. To start us off, let's understand more about his kit. Dan Heng's skill provides all allies with a shield based on his attack. So if he is an attack scaler and you want high attack stats on him, you can stack Dan Heng's shields to up to 300% of the current shield provided by the skill, which means for whatever attack you have on Dan Heng, it directly translates to the amount of shield you have, and you can stack it for up to 300%. So you really want high attack, the more you do, the higher your shields are gonna get. Do expect about 4 to 6k plus shields to be up consistently with an endgame build on him. His skill comes with one final effect, where it designates an ally as the bondmate, providing the target with the Soul Dragon summon. The Soul Dragon will appear on the action bar as if it's like a summonable entity like Lightning Lord. Dan Heng can also increase the bondmate's attack by 15% of his own attack based on his bonus ability, which is not a crazy increase, but it is quite helpful for attack scalers. To touch on this technique real quick, you can get this bondmate instantly without using your first skill even if you want to, just by using the technique and making sure the attacker is whoever you want to be the bondmate of. It's similar to how Cerebro works. Now then, let's take a look at his talent. When an ally becomes the bondmate, they obtain a soul dragon with an initial speed of 165. This effect allows Sunday to activate his skill's additional effect, which states you gain a 50% additional damage increase if an ally has a summon. So the best idea here would be to provide a DPS without summons with the soul dragon. After that, have Sunday buff his DPS, and you'll be able to provide the maximum 80% damage increase for them to shine better. Not only that, Sunday can action advance both the bondmate and the soul dragon with his skill. This includes even if you make someone like Aglaia the bondmate. So yep, Sunday will be pushing up Aglaia, her memo sprite, and the soul dragon all at once. When the soul dragon takes action, it dispels one debuff from all allies and provides a shield based off Dan Heng's attack. Just like before, the shield can also be stacked with his skill's shield. That means you do get your shield quite consistently. His bonus ability allows Dan Heng to gain 6 energy every time a bondmate uses an attack. Not only that, the Soul Dragon will also gain 15% action advance for every time your bondmate attacks. This means if you're Dan Heng with someone that's pretty quick or pretty consistent in dealing damage, someone like Aglaia or Archer, they will be able to help the dragon get a lot more turns, generate a lot more energy for Dan Heng, and essentially allow Dan Heng to not have to use his skill to generate energy for his ultimate. He gets to just spam basics, uses the ult and Soul Dragon to gain shields, and that'll be enough to sustain your team. As a final note, he also gained massive action advance for himself at the start of combat, which helps you use his skill if need be. Up next would be his ultimate, which does not do a lot of damage, but it gains all allies shield that can be stacked just as mentioned before with the rest of his kit. The ult also enhances the soul dragon, and the enhanced dragon will deal damage to all enemies and additional damage based off the bondmate's element and based off their attack. This essentially means Dan Heng does not need any crit stats or damage stats on him. He really just needs to put out the soul dragon to a DPS that is buffed up, and that'll achieve solid damage output. Now do note that this DPS needs to be an attack scaler for the soul dragon's enhanced hit to really do good damage, but don't worry about that too much because in the end the damage output from the dragon is not exactly so big that you have to change your whole team just to satisfy it. Dan Heng's final bonus ability allows the enhanced soul dragon to deal 1 extra instance of additional damage to the enemy with the highest HP, although the scaling is slightly lower. You also gain more shields to whoever that has the least shields when the dragon takes the turn, so overall his shields are quite consistent and it should be there when you need them to be. With all that said, Dan Heng's ability to sustain your team will mainly be based on how many actions you can get with the Soul Dragon and how often can you generate enough energy to use his ult. If you can achieve both consistently, you should generate enough shields to not even have to use his skill that much, which is where his skill can be treated as emergency shield, where you can choose to use it if you feel threatened or simply use a basic to generate skill points and rely only on the rest of his kit for shields. It's totally valid and doable, which makes Dan Heng a usable sustain sustain for genuinely any team, at least just for survival. But without a doubt, his best value is when he's paired with Sunday, helping him max out his skill's damage amp on the main DPS without a summon on its own. A few pairings like Sunday and Agza, Sunday Finan, Sunday Saber are all great options to pair Dan Heng for that reason. Now that we understand his kit, it's time to jump into his Lightcone. Now, he is a free character, not quite so the case for his Lightcone, right? So is it worth going for? Let's first take a look at his signature. The main value with it would be the high base attack and high attack bonus that it provides. After all, not a lot of other Lightcones from the Path of Preservation can provide high attack at all, which obviously make this Lightcone his best in slot. Now, I wouldn't say you have to force yourself to get this though, because alternatively, you can definitely consider Journey Forever Peaceful, which is a Battle Pass Lightcone. At max duplicates, it provides shield effect increase and damage increase for shielded allies, which are all still perfect for Dan Heng. The value of this is actually comparable to even his signature, but only if you have max dupe of it though. This makes it a great idea to not have to spend on his Lightcone and just go with the Battle Pass one if you got that option. But well, you need max dupes of that and not everyone has it, right? Now, the next best option for Lightcones would actually still be Journey Forever Peaceful, but at 0 dupes. For players that maybe bought one Battle Pass before, if you have this, you could just slap it on and it'll work out for you. Next up, you can consider Max Dupes Texture of Memories and Max Dupes We Are Wildfire. None of them provide attack bonus as your effect, nor do they have really high base attack, but it will still work out mostly, especially depending on what team you're using and what mode you're playing against. If it's just MOC Pure Fiction or Apocalyptic Shadow, don't worry about it too much. You can still make do with just the Herda Store's Lightcone, for example. Now, I would like to give a special mention to Moment of Victory because it does provide relatively good base attack, and it is specifically useful for the increased chance to be attacked. You'd have 200% taunt value with Dan Heng through this Lightcone, and it can be sometimes helpful against single target attackers. It could be especially impactful and save your life sometimes if you somehow get really low, but it is a bit situational. Next on the agenda will be Dan Heng's builds and relics. You want to go for the newly added 4-piece Self-Enshrouded Recluse. It's designed for him and gets your ally a nifty 15% crit damage increase. Alternatives can be a mix of 2-piece Acertos and 2-piece Musketeer, just for the extra speed and attack. As for ornaments, you want to go for the Lushaka set, and the value is a lot on energy regen. You want to use Dan Heng's ult as much as you can, and yeah, Lushaka does have that energy regen for you. You want to grab that if you could. Alternatives can be the Penacony Land of the Dreams. It does give you energy regen too, but you'd have to consider your allies' element to benefit from it fully. Otherwise, Space Sealing Station for simple attack boost can still be very strong, as it does still increase your shield strength. In terms of main stats, you want to go for an attack percent body, attack percent or speed boots, attack percent orb, and energy regen rope. You can consider using speed boot or attack boot depending on if you need the extra skill point generation by using more basics at a higher speed point. But in exchange, you get weaker shields if you don't have the attack, and vice versa, right? Using an attack percent rope can be considered as well, where you will get stronger shields in total but less ult usage. Each choice have their pros and cons, and it does depend on what team and what allies you are pairing him with. Moving up next, we got Dan Heng's teams. The best idea is to pair him with a main DPS without summons that can also be used with Sunday. The two most ideal options are Finan and Anaxa, with Finan's team being himself, Robin or Saridra, Sunday, and Dan Heng. Or Anaxa, pair him with Robin / Saridra again, Sunday, and Dan Heng, and that should be ideal. Both of these teams pretty much get a free 50% damage increase from Sunday, buffing the damage dealer with an additional Soul Dragon provided by Dan Heng. That is essentially perfect, and every part of Dan Heng's kit is very much maximized. In terms of alternative teams though, there are pretty much just an infinite amount. He is a sustained character after all that can do just as well by just helping your team survive, even if he doesn't help you perfectly offensively. For instance, he can be used instead of Ho-Ho for any teams, like with Aglaia Sunday, Saber Sunday, or Kafka Hycillence. He can be used instead of Hyacinth as well in say a Castrus or Evernight hyper carry team. I wouldn't recommend it that much. Obviously, it is a way less ideal team for the lack of HP change, but if your goal is to just survive, well, he's got you. He can be used instead of Aventrine in the follow-up attacks, since the Soul Dragon enhanced attacks are considered as follow-ups. Even if it doesn't though, at least he can still keep your team alive by just relying on himself and the Soul Dragon. These are just a list of few likely team options, and most of them have their own pros and cons, like lacking Ho-Ho's energy regen for some. But at the end of the day, he helps your team survive, and if you can live, you can beat the game. Well, unless you're finding a new endgame, that one might be a bit too hard for just any team, right? But in the end, it'll depend on what team you're using. Finally, let's take a look at his Eidolons now. His E1 provides 1 skill points when he ults, but the big effect is the 18% all-type res pen. This is a unique multiplier, which means it's hard to be diluted. Basically, it's worth lad, which makes this a pretty worthwhile Eidolon to get. I recommend going for this Eidolon instead of his own Lightcone first. His E2 is an overall damage increase from the enhanced Soul Dragon, with an additional 2 turns of enhancement for the Soul Dragon per ultimate used. On top of that is a good chunk of shield increase, which looks pretty good on paper. This allows him to near guarantee survival even if you're just spamming basic attacks. However, it is team dependent. Some teams like Finance survives more than fine without this E2, or if Aglaia you can get shields so much you probably don't need extra shields. I only recommend going for it if you are a hard Dan Heng fan, which hey, that is totally valid. His E4 is a very low priority. You survive better with the mod mate, and that's about it. The E6 is the biggest one, providing essentially unconditional damage taken increase on enemies, unconditional defense ignore for the bondmate, and you'll also obtain an increase of 250% multiplier on his additional damage when using the enhanced Soul Dragon hit. Oh yeah, did I mention it also hits all enemies now instead of one with the highest HP? This contributes to a massive overall damage increase, and you'll definitely feel Dan Heng's Soul Dragon damage become a reliable source to wipe up some mobs in AoE scenarios. However, for the fact that E4 lacks a lot to be desired, is not as worth going E6 overall. Well, unless you're a massive Dan Heng stan, in which case, you do you and I totally support it. In summary, I recommend just staying with an E0S0 Dan Heng and preparing for the coming banners, as he'll work out fine as just someone that you need to have the shield up to sustain. But if you are going to pull on something, I do recommend still going for the E1S0 Dan Heng and just sticking with any alternative Lightcones you can get. From that point onwards, I would still prioritize E2, and only then I grab the Lightcone. But realistically, E0S0, because while he's free anyway, I'll just like to keep everything free so I can save for someone in the future, man. And that will be all for today. I hope I helped you out, and let me know in the comment section down below how you will be putting your Dan Heng and what team you're going to be using him in. You let me know as well what you're going to be pulling. Are you going to go for his Eidolons or not? Or are you going to be saving for Cyrene, which is what a lot of people are planning to do? And that will be all for today. Take care.